The Epstein files are way worse than I even imagined. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not the type of person to just spend my time unpacking or trying to understand just super far-fetched ideas, right? I don't usually believe things because I'm like, that's too out of pocket, right? But here's the thing. A lot of stuff in these files, I literally would have said was far-fetched, but it is real. The government and specifically the Trump administration is engaged in the biggest cover up of our lifetime. As we all know, Congress passed the Epstein Transparency Act, which required the DOJ to release all documents it had on Jeffrey Epstein outside of redactions to protect the identity of victims. Now, after stalling and barely releasing 1% of the files, the Justice Department finally released 3 million pages that contained over 2,000 videos and 180,000 pictures. Now, understand, this is only about half of the documents. It's still another 3 million documents that hasn't been released. And within the documents that they released, there are thousands of unnecessary redactions. Literally, there are entire pages blacked out. That is not complying with the Epstein Transparency Act. The government is still engaged in this cover-up. So I just want y'all to keep in mind that we're only seeing half the files. And the half that we're seeing is heavily redacted. And it is villain-level criminal activity throughout these files. I can only imagine what the stuff that they hiding from us look like when the stuff that they showed us is this bad. And on Monday, a few members of Congress got a chance to review unredacted Epstein files. So just to be clear, these are the same files that the DOJ released, just without all of the black redactions that we see on these pages. And Congressman Jamie Raskin said he see evidence already that the DOJ is protecting Trump. He also said within the unredacted Epstein files, Trump is mentioned more than 1 million times. Think about that. We haven't even seen the other 3 million documents. He only talking about within the documents that was released. These files help me understand Jeffrey Epstein a lot more. Like, I knew he was a sicko. I knew he was a criminal, pedophile, child rapist and all of that. But what I didn't really understand that he is all of that, but with a criminal network. And he kind of connect rich people with obviously children first, but then drugs, hitmen. I see blackmail in here, foreign intel. I mean, you name it. This guy is a one-stop shop for all things illegal. Now, let's take a look at some of these files, and I'm going to explain exactly what it is we're looking at because as we know, the Epstein files is a collection of different types of documents, right? We can see some FBI witness forms. We can see some notes that was taken from his jail cell. We can see, indictments and stuff like that. So I'm going to explain what we're looking at and what each document means. Before we get started, I want to take a second and ask everybody to subscribe to my YouTube page and sign up for my email list. Y'all know that's the best way to stay in the loop on all things politics with Steve. Without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so this is a FBI form that documents witnesses' complaints, right? And right at the top, we can see that a person reported an unidentified female friend was forced to perform oral sex on President Trump approximately 35 years ago in New Jersey. The friend told Alexis she was approximately 13 or 14 years old when this occurred. And the friend allegedly bit President Trump while performing oral sex. The friend was allegedly hit in the face after she laughed about biting President Trump. The friend says she was also abused by Epstein. So that is a witness statement saying that Donald Trump forced a 13-year-old minor to perform oral sex on him, and she was hit in the face for laughing about biting him. Now, they say Katie Johnson was the victim in this case. She's one of Epstein's victims that, went on record giving her name. She also said that she was abused by Epstein. There is a list of accusations like that in these FBI witness forms against Trump. This is just an insane thing to have on your name. Forcing a 13-year-old to give you oral sex. I mean, this guy is sick. Again, I can spend this entire time going through accusations of Trump raping minors, but I just had to show y'all that one. That one was insane. All right, so this next document is another witness statement. This victim is saying that Donald Trump told them to make sure she drinks so she forget I was there. I just want y'all to understand how these people operate. Let's get into the document. So, looking at the second paragraph, she says, I'm a target of Donald Trump. In 2014, a CIA agent tricked me into going to Epstein's in Palm Beach. He said I was going to a holiday party. I got there with him and was handed a drink, and I was drugged once again. He took me to a room and said, wait here, I'll be back. And immediately the door was shut and locked by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Every time I tried to get out, they would back me into a room, and it was Ghislaine Maxwell who was really doing this. I was locked into a room to be a sex slave. At one point, the butler unlocked the door, and standing there was Donald Trump. I wasn't his cup of tea. He said, make sure she drinks some of that so she forget I was here. Then said to the butler, only open a door that you think I will like. All right, next up is the wildest claim that I've seen in the Epstein files so far. I literally thought this was a fake document. So I didn't even spread it immediately when I seen people talking about it online. But I'm about to show y'all an FBI email in which they discussing a victim report that's deemed credible. Again, that's why these FBI agents are talking about it. And a witness stated that George Bush and George Bush Sr. raped black boys and engaged in like ritual sacrifice. Again, this is victim testimony. Let me show it to y'all. All right, so here's the email. We see the FBI says the subject line say interview a purported Epstein victim. We see thanks. I didn't realize Bush raped him too. Okay. So if we look, the email dated August 28, 2019 says, I'd like to add a few other points disclosed by the purported victim. While on his yacht, he witnessed African American males having sex with white blonde females, all of whom were bleeding during intercourse. He was a victim of a type of ritualistic sacrifice in which his feet was cut open with a scimitar, but left no scarring. On the yacht, he says he witnessed babies being dismembered, their intestines removed, and individuals eating the feces from these intestines. He was also raped by George Bush I. Bruh, that's just wild. Like, what the actual fuck? Again, I thought this was fake. It is a lot of fake Epstein documents out there, which is, I really don't like that because this shit is already terrible. We do not need to add fake documents to make it seem worse because that just muddies up the situation. So I didn't want to be spreading fake news, fake information, but I just could not believe that this is a real thing. This is literally something that I would have dismissed as being conspiratorial. Eating, feces out of, baby intestines. What? Like, this is insane. All right, so next up, we about to look at an FBI 1023 form citing a confidential human source, which is basically a spy, and this spy is alleging that Trump was compromised by Israel. So we're going to take a look at two separate documents, and I want y'all to understand, this is not a theory. This is an actual FBI report. They actually say that his son-in-law and money man Jared Kushner is actually the real man in charge. All right, so some of this stuff is small. Like I said, we're going to take a look at two separate documents. So this is first. So we can see at the top, it says FD 1023, as I said. CHS is confidential human sources. So basically a spy reporting on their findings. So if we look down at what's highlighted in red, it says a confidential human source advised that this was a real collusion story. Trump has been compromised by Israel, and Kushner is the real brains behind the organization in his presidency. All right, and then flipping to this next document, again, FBI 1023 form, CHS, and then we can see it says the spy or the confidential human source believed that Dershowitz was co-opted by Mossad and subscribed to their mission. Basically, and if you read through this, it's going to say that Dershowitz had influence on, young men. It says Jared Kushner and Josh Kushner was both his students. And look, here's the thing. When everything was going on with Trump and bombing Iran's nuclear facilities and stuff like that, I kept saying that it seems like Trump is just doing anything that Israel asked him to do. The U.S. intelligence community said Iran was further away from a nuclear bomb than what Israel intelligence community said. But Trump took Israel intelligence community, word and striked Iran. So I've been pointing out the fact that it seemed like Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel controls Trump, but right here in this FBI form from FBI spy, we can see that, that's actually a thing. Another thing in these Epstein files is it seems like every single person that's connected to Trump is in the Epstein files. Like, this shit is like a brotherhood, a Epstein brotherhood. I remember when I used to watch Scandal, and I got to the part where I was finding out that everybody was B613. That is exactly what this feels like. So I'm going to go over some of the people that I found in the Epstein files at a high level, and then I'm going to also drop a separate video where I go into a lot of different political people that are in the Epstein files. So let's get to it. All right, first up, we got Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Again, another person in the Epstein files. It's kind of like Trump just went through Epstein contact list and was choosing people to be in his cabinet. Now, I want y'all to understand this. This guy is about to lie for absolutely no reason. In a recent interview, he was just saying that he met Epstein once and he didn't want anything to do with him. He said that after he met Epstein, he knew that he was a sicko and that was it. He met him one time, cut it off, right? Let's take a look at that.
I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Really?
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh.
And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of avoid. And so, yeah, that's my story. A one and absolutely done.
All right, so y'all heard him say one and done. He never mentioned anything about going to the island. Now, let me give y'all a timeline. That story that he's discussed, that was apparently in 2005, according to him. Epstein was first convicted in 2008 down in Florida. So at that point, he was a sex offender and he was a convicted sex offender. Dude obviously didn't need to wait until that 2008 conviction because he consented from him that he wasn't right, according to him. Well, let me show y'all these emails from 2012. Again, this is the current Commerce Secretary of the United States. This email is from 2012. 4 years after he was first convicted. 7 years since the time that he said he met him in 2005 and didn't want anything to do with him. And we can see he's setting up a lunch with Jeffrey Epstein. Y'all can read through it. And then Lutnick says, okay, lunch on Sunday. See you then. This guy is just a liar. And then he got pressed by a member of Congress on whether or not his last time interacting with Jeffrey Epstein was in 2005. I got to show y'all that too. This nigga just a liar.
Secretary Lutnick, as I said in my opening statement, you led people to believe that you had cut off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein after the 2005 encounter you and your wife had.
That's the story that he just told us about, that 2005 encounter.
In his apartment. But as I'm sure you know, the Epstein files show a very different record of interaction. Why do the Epstein files show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012?
thank you for the question. I'm glad to be here to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then. Over the next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall, 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him, and then a year and a half after that, I met him, and never again. Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person, okay?
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did.
Did he go to Epstein Island? Here we go. Here we go. Again, never said any of this in that whole, I'm so disgusted with this guy, I don't want to talk to him again.
The visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when, in fact, you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
the only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
And you realize that, you know, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2011?
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence, that's there's nothing to that, is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else.
Hey, he basically saying, if y'all ain't already discovered this, I'm not going to admit to nothing new. So he said, I don't know what you're referring to. And then when he started pressing him on specifics, he tried to figure out, like, is this already publicly out there?
And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Look, I'm not saying he lying about his time on an island, but I can't trust a word he's saying. Why would I believe somebody that told me they met a guy in 2005 and was so disgusted by him, they never wanted to see this person again? And then I learned that this guy went to this person's private island. You don't end up on somebody's island by accident. So again, I'm not saying that he's lying about whatever it is that he says happened during that trip there. The point is, you had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which calls anything that you say about this situation into question. That's it, that's all. And look, speaking of the Epstein files discrediting people's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, because everybody want to claim that they didn't know what he was doing or they had no relation to him. But then these documents is, definitely exposing these liars. And another lie that was exposed was Trump saying that he didn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein pedophile activities. That was completely discredited. A newly released document showed that Trump was one of the first to notify Florida police that Epstein was a pedophile and what he had going on. Now, before MAGA think that this is somehow a gotcha or this is vindication for Trump, this is bad for Trump because publicly he said that, he and Epstein were still friends even after this point. He also claims that he never knew about any of this activity with Jeffrey Epstein. So when Virginia Dufresne was stolen from the Mar-a-Lago massage spa after this happened, Trump can't say, oh, I didn't know Epstein was a, pedophile. You definitely knew he was a pedophile. So let's get into this document. All right, so this is what I'm referring to. And New Republic said in July 2019, Trump was asked by a reporter if he knew that Epstein sexually assaulted girls. Trump replied, no, I had no idea. He said that in 2019. So if we click on this, we see uncovered Trump FBI call destroys his public story on Epstein. And basically there's an Epstein document that showed that Donald Trump spoke to Palm Beach police back in 2006 about Epstein's inappropriate activity with teenage girls. Newly released government documents show. So it says that Trump said, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this, Trump told the police chief. And remind you, I told y'all Monday, some Congress members started getting unredacted views of these Epstein documents, right? So Congressman Jamie Raskin also said there is the DOJ redacted a conversation from Epstein lawyers which quoted Trump saying that Epstein was a guest in Mar-a-Lago in 2009. Again, we can see the file, but we can't see the redaction, so we can't see who they're talking about. Jamie Raskin said that they're talking about Trump. So this also contradicts Trump saying that he kicked Epstein out in like 2004 or something. I'm gonna let y'all hear this from Congressman Jamie Raskin.
During the period of the 2009 investigation. And Epstein's lawyers synopsized and quoted Trump as saying that that Jeffrey Epstein was not a member of his club at Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, and he had never been asked to leave. And that was redacted for some indeterminate, inscrutable reason. I know it seems to be at odds with some things that President Trump has been saying recently about how he had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club or asked him to leave, and this was at least one report that appears to contradict it.
All right, so next up, one of the things I've always heard was Jeffrey Epstein was connected with foreign governments, but I had, no idea to what real extent this was. But I'm going to show y'all this email Jeffrey Epstein talk about coordinating actions against the Syrian president in order to top in or weaken like Iran and Hezbollah. He says that Libya is a much easier option. Let's go ahead and take a look at this email. All right, so next up, I always heard that Epstein was involved with foreign governments and, he had a lot of foreign business dealings and stuff like that, but I never knew to what extent, right? Again, I don't usually dive into like conspiratorial stuff, but look at this email that I have on the screen. Again, I did not know it was to this extent. This email is showing that Epstein coordinated actions against the Syrian president. He was trying to topple the regime in order to weaken Iran and Hezbollah. That would have been beneficial for Israel. He says that Libya is seen as a much easier option. Again, I am right here. He says Assad regime fall. I just can't believe that this guy was into all of this. Like this is honestly surprising to me. And by the way, that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as like what he had going on overseas. There is at least 10,000 references to Russia or Russian officials in these documents, over 1,000 references to Putin personally in these documents. I'm doing a whole separate video on his connections to Russia and foreign entanglements, but I just had to basically paint a picture of who this guy was and just what types of crimes he was committing. All right, now let's talk Elon Musk. Another guy that was disgusted by Epstein, according to him. You know, he released a public statement that said he was invited to Epstein Island and refused. He literally said he didn't want anything to do with Epstein. Kind of found out these emails, Elon is basically saying, please, please, please invite me to your island. Like, I'd be cool, I swear. Elon Musk even creeped out the pedophiles. Like, that is insane. Like, we see how Elon act, and it's like if he wasn't rich, nobody would like this guy. But when you look at these emails, it really point out, and you can really see that this guy is a loser. Like, what? We can see that Elon tried to go to this island several times. Right here is a message from Elon, probably just me. This is his first wife. So he's just saying that it'll be the two of them. And he's asking what day or night will be the wildest party on our island. How many people will you be for the heli to the island? I'm guessing he's saying that how many people do you need for the helicopter to the island? But as we can see, in 2012, Elon is dying to get on this island. All right, and I just want y'all to see his original claim. Like I said, Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I refused. Bro, did what I just show y'all look like a refusal? Let me show y'all some more of this guy lies. All right, we see Elon saying, to the best of our knowledge, he never toured SpaceX. Don't know where that came from. In 2020, he's talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Again, these files expose that this dude is a liar. Let's look at the evidence. All right, so this is an email to Jeffrey Epstein, and let's skip down to the second email in the body. He says, the girls and I are going to see Elon Musk at SpaceX tomorrow. Are you around? I'm here, but tied up during the day. Do you want my 407 to fly to Hawthorne Airport? Again, Elon is just a liar. Again, I'm not accusing Elon Musk of any crimes or going to the island, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. That's all I'm saying. Like, if he never went to Epstein Island, it wasn't because he didn't have the intent to go to Epstein Island. It's because they didn't want him. Like, that's insane. To sit there and say you refused when you were rejected at the very least, if you never went to the island, is insane. All right, next up, we got Trump-loving Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. He was also mentioned in the file. So let me show y'all this victim discussing a conversation with her former boss, and her boss was telling her that Donald Trump was involved in this pedophile ring, and she also mentions Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. So let's take a look at that. All right, so looking at this paragraph that starts with, in 1998, we see in 1998, Robert A. Murray, my boss at Bank of Boston, said there were psychopaths in the CIA and FBI playing a game. He said Donald Trump was involved and was in this pedophile ring. He mentioned Justice Clarence Thomas, who I didn't know. He also told me I was sold to the CIA by the man who pretended to be my father, the man that raped me repeatedly and sex trafficked me. I didn't believe it, but I do now. Again, no indication of wrongdoing from what I just read, but found it very interesting that names like that pop up in things like this, right? Jay-Z made an appearance in the files. Again, I seen his name. I see no allegations of wrongdoing, but let me just show y'all real quick. All right, so this is FBI intake form. If we skip down to the paragraph that has yellow in it, we see a victim claiming that an unknown man abducted her from her home. Later, she woke up in the presence of Harvey Weinstein and Sean Carter, Jay-Z, while Weinstein had inserted his fingers into, they blocked it out, believed she was in Epstein's mansion in Florida. So basically, Jay-Z was just in the presence of this girl, this victim being fingered. Again, no criminal activity alleged. I just thought it was interesting. All right, y'all, this video is kind of long, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I do want to show y'all one more thing that's in these files. On the same day, the FBI opened up a child sex trafficking case against Jeffrey Epstein. So back in 2018, he ordered a half dozen of 55-gallon containers full of sulfuric acid to his private island. Come on, y'all. The same day that the FBI opened the investigation? Like, was he tipped off? Did he know that this investigation was about to happen? Let me show y'all these files and then we're going to talk about it. All right, so this is an email. It says FBI New York violent crime threat. I just want to show y'all that on December 6, 2018, the FBI initiated a child sex trafficking case. Now, that means that this case was just initiated. That means that they literally just opened up the case. Nobody is notified when they open up a case against you. All right, so this here is a wire transfer. If we look at the date, it is the exact same date that we just seen the FBI initiated the investigation. He's ordering 330 gallons of sulfuric acid. Now, this raises suspicion that he's trying to dispose bodies. I mean, what else is he buying this stuff for? And he was definitely tipped off to the fact that an investigation was going on. Look, the files and evidence released in these Epstein documents should shock the American public the same way 9/11 did. Like, seeing some of the stuff I seen up in the Epstein files literally rewired the way that I think about certain people. I think that people need to be way more outraged and we need to start seeing, in the UK, people are literally losing their careers. Prince Andrews ain't even a prince anymore. So we need to see that same kind of stuff happening in the United States. I can't even express the level of sickness, evil, and just any other bad terms that somebody would like. I just can't even believe that stuff like this is actually happening.